Hey everybody, and welcome to another Tausken review. Today I'll be taking a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake. The original Final Fantasy VII is to this day one of my favorite all-time games. From the music, the story, the gameplay, everything about this game was fantastic. So when I heard that Square began remaking the original, I was thrilled. What I found was a game that I both love and dislike. And that's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. So let's start with the story. In Final Fantasy VII, if you've never played it before, you play as Cloud Strife, a mercenary who has been roped into helping a terrorist group called Avalanche. Avalanche is basically an eco-terrorist group trying to stop the evil megacorporation called Shinra from using Mako energy. The game begins with one of these terrorist actions as you jump off a train as Cloud, joining Barrett and other members of Avalanche to go destroy a Mako reactor. And the game really goes on from there as you learn more about Mako, Shinra, and other things going on in the world. Now, it's a pretty well-told story. There's some problems I have with the changes they made, but we'll get to that later. The actual overall progression of the story is really good. The characters are really relatable, fun, interesting. The voiceovers are really great. I mean, I played the original Final Fantasy VII a long time ago, and it was entirely text then. There was no voiceovers. And they've done a fantastic job of bringing them to life with voice actors that I just love. It's so easy to get invested into this game. I love what they've done with the original cast in the game, but they've also expanded characters like Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, who were basically just throwaway characters in the original game that barely appeared, into fully fleshed out characters. All the main characters like Barrett, Cloud, Tifa, Aerith are all great as well. And it really feels like just everyone in this game is so well brought to life. This also gets me to one of my problems with this game. It's, for the most part, a very faithful game to the original Final Fantasy VII. However, it does make some substantial changes, which I can't really get to for spoilers, but it changes some things in pretty significant ways for veterans. Final Fantasy VII Remake takes place only in the original Midgar, which is the original game's like first 4 to 6 hours of an otherwise like 40 to 60 hour game. And so it ends up feeling like when you've expanded characters like Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, where you spend long amounts of time dinking around with these characters, like there's just so much padding here. In particular, there's some areas where like you're moving between one area to another area of Midgar, and it just goes on forever of you wandering down endless holidays, doing fights again and again and again with monsters or soldiers, to the point where it just feels like this game was stretched way too much. They could have cut a bunch of this stuff out and just expanded a little bit more into the original game's territory, which I would have liked so much more than playing so much of these filler sections. And there's also some weird additions, like this new character called Roche, who's basically thrown into the story for like 15-20 minutes, who then exits and never shows up again. It ends up feeling like just a complete waste. Like, why did you add this character? You know, maybe they're kind of looking towards the future. They're going to add him later. Maybe he's going to have another section, but it's just these small additions overall that just kind of build up to feeling like so much padding to an otherwise concise original game that makes Midgar just feel like it's just so over bloated in some ways. Now, overall, I've been kind of negative there for a little bit, but I do like the story of this game overall. Like, the characters are great, the progression is fun, it's just got a lot of greatness to the story quality. Like, if they make more Final Fantasy games with this level of quality, I would be so happy after all the failures of Final Fantasy 15 and other ones that have been just a disaster. Now, as far as the actual gameplay, it's a pretty expansive game. I mean, if you want a game where you can just dig in for hours and hours, then this is your game. There's a ton of main story, a ton of side quests, tons of collectible things like different summons and stuff to get. It's just got a ton of content, so it's a really great value. The actual combat is very much in the direction that Final Fantasy 15 was going, so it's sort of a hybrid between turn-based and active real-time gameplay. So you're basically making choices over time with attacking or defending or casting spells, but for the most part you're kind of just watching the screen. There isn't a whole lot of control over your character, and this is definitely a very big improvement over Final Fantasy 15, which I did not like the combat system in that game at all. This game is way better than that, but I don't feel like it's quite there yet. Let me explain the combat a little bit. You can have up to 3 characters in your party at a time. So you can have characters like Tifa, Cloud, Barrett, and they all have different roles, right? Like, Barrett's more of your kind of range guy. He's got a gun arm on him that can just blast people. You've got Tifa, who's a very fast character. She has a lot of combos. Cloud's a little bit slower melee character. And then you've got characters like Aerith who can cast like healing abilities and stuff like that. So there's definitely a great diversity. The actual combat is a bit simple though. You've basically got square, triangle. So triangle will be something more like a power-up ability, whereas Square will be like a traditional attack ability. You can also choose to use things like Materia, which is your magic spells, which could be like fire, healing, and other things. You've also got different actions for each character, so you build up an ATB gauge over time that can be used to be spent on different abilities like Brave or Braver or other attacking abilities that can cause things. Or as Aerith, you can use healing abilities to heal up your party a bit. Over time, you'll also gain up a Limit Break, which can be used for more powerful abilities. What I don't like is that it feels sometimes like you're kind of just watching the actions on screen. It feels like it's a halfway point between turn-based, where you're making tons of interesting decisions, and action-based gameplay where things are fast-paced, you're having to block, dodge, attack, and stuff like that. This game feels like it's trying to be both at once, and I'm not entirely sure that works. I think when you get a full party of 3 people, this game feels significantly better. When you can swap between different characters, using different abilities, that have better situational advantages, right? But what I don't like is that your party members don't build up the ATB meter on their own. So you have to switch characters constantly to try and build these things up. And it ends up making it feel like there's just not as many decisions as there could be, or as much going on. It ends up feeling like your AI companions aren't really doing anything. You're basically just the only one. This is made worse by the fact that the AI seems to just kind of target you constantly as the player. But I mean, overall, the combat system is pretty decent for the most part. It's way better than Final Fantasy 15. I just don't think it's 100% there yet. The enemy AI is kind of garbage. One thing I really don't like in particular is there's a ton of like turrets or air enemies, and the only characters that are good against them are ranged characters like Aerith or Barret. So you have to kind of switch to those characters to use them. And sometimes you don't have those characters, or maybe they're in a weird position or you don't really want to play them. And so you'll be playing as like Cloud trying to attack an air unit, and then he like flies through the air, jumping up and down, trying to swing at these things. And it's just ridiculous. He doesn't hit them, he misses, and you have to position your character in the right way, and it's just super frustrating. Obviously, you could use things like materia and stuff like that, so you can kind of get around it, but I just would like if the system was way better when it came to air units. Maybe don't have them like flying in the air constantly, or have stupid turrets that are up on a wall where only Barret can hit them, where you have to switch to him and sit there and pound on it for like 10 minutes. But overall, the combat system is a significant improvement over the hybrid system that they've been trying in Final Fantasy for a long time. It's definitely getting there. Now, the actual graphics are pretty great in this game. Like, you'll be running around an area and you'll just sit back and say, holy crap, the graphics in this game are good. The main characters look gorgeous. Like, all the animated cinematics and things that are in the game look so dang good. The only thing that I have to complain about the graphics is some of the side characters and terrain look a bit muddy, especially some of the textures on the terrain where it's just a little bit bleh. As far as the sound goes, this is an area where they completely and utterly, in typical Square behavior, knocked it out of the park. Like, this game has fantastic sounds. Like, the combat sounds great, the characters sound great, the voiceovers are great. Where this game really kills it is the music. Like, they lifted these old 90s tracks and made modern versions that sound just as good. Like, you hear the Genova tracks or the Sephiroth themes or other things, and you're just blown away by how good they are in this game. Like, it is just amazing. So overall, I have very mixed feelings about Final Fantasy VII. I feel like they stretched out one of the worst and least interesting parts of the game, and they certainly did a good job in many ways, but I feel like it just bloats the original experience too much, and I don't really like some of the story changes they made. But despite that, I feel like this game is clearly an 8 out of 10. And if the story was just a little bit better, I would totally give this game a 9 out of 10. And I feel like this game is very much worthy of a 9 out of 10. Like, it is such a damn good game that if you're a new player, you're not even going to care about some of the complaints that I have. It's just such a fantastic, well-rounded, high production value game. Like, the characters are great, the graphics are great, the designs are great, the combat's fun. Everything about this game is just so good. Like, if this is what future Final Fantasy games are going to be like, then I am totally ready, because the last couple of games have been a little bit disappointing. This is definitely a great step in the right direction for Square, and so I would highly recommend it to both new players and veterans. Even if you're a little upset with some of the changes they made in the story department like me, you're still really going to enjoy this game.